Hello and welcome to today's video of the anatomy of power of the following countries: the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, Israel, Japan, and the United Arab Emirates. I hope you enjoy. Okay, so first we're going to talk about Japan. Japan is an island state composed of four main islands and thousands of other small islands. Plenty of rivers go through the country, but the lack of land makes agriculture extremely hard. Also, the rivers are not big enough for shipping between the country. They're only small enough for agriculture. But lack of usable space, thanks to the country's mountainous terrain, limits the country's ability to do agriculture. And the lack of usable land also has created very big density areas within the island, with the biggest island of the four having almost an 80% population capacity of the whole country. Japan is one of the world's leading manufacturers of high-end technology, but Japan has a very big issue, which is its dwindling population, which is rapidly shrinking Japan's workforce. They don't have a concrete solution to this problem yet, and thanks to xenophobia, they can't really bring immigration as a policy. This, of course, brings many problems, but experts say that their ability to manufacture won't be affected by this thanks to the world's evolving technological capabilities in AI and other automated services. Japan has extremely strong ties with the United States of America, especially militarily, after Second World War. For example, Okinawa, one of Japan's biggest not main islands, is absolutely militarily controlled by the United States, with the United States Marine Corps having bases stationed there to protect Taiwan and other Asian waterways from China, Russia, North Korea, and any other actors that want to impede on waterway freedom. And Japan, being an island, is 100% dependent on open waterways, so it relies on the United States to police them and protect them, as the naval forces of Japan not only are limited by the United Nations after Second World War, but are not big enough to protect places down in the China South Sea against um, threats like China. And Japan, of course, being an island, it has access to the open sea, so that being the South China Sea and the Pacific Ocean. Differences with the other three countries are that Japan is the only island in the list. Japan is the only country out of the four that isn't located in the Middle East. Sorry, it is the only country out of the four with a dwindling population problem. It is the only country with extremely limited use of space. Very low percentage of it is usable, and it depends greatly on foreign aid regarding power and materials. All four countries depend on foreign aid for their military protection, but Japan is the only one that greatly depends on foreign aid regarding power, so electricity, and raw materials for manufacturing. Similarities with the other countries is that all four have access to some kind of open sea. All four countries rely heavily on foreign help for their survival as states. All four countries could be easily manipulated by rivals by closing down their trade routes. In this case, China could. All four countries have difficult situations regarding their populations, which are the following: Israel with Palestine, Japan with its exponentially older demographic, the UAE with 88% of its people being foreigners, and Saudi Arabia with conflicting Muslim ideologies. And the anatomy of power of Japan in one sentence is that it is one of the world's most important exporters and developers of technological and high-end goods. And the activity that Japan is good at, that could be best explained using its anatomy of power, is the following: that Japan is one of the world's most important developer and exporter of technological and high-end goods, and has the capability and the infrastructure to export them, thanks to it being a island state. It is very good at naval endeavors. So we're going to continue. Now we're going to talk about Israel. The key political features of Israel is that it's a tiny religious country surrounded by rivals. It is located in the east side of the Mediterranean Ocean, and by those, it has access to the Mediterranean Ocean. It has a very few allies, and the allies that it does have are very, very far apart. But it is extremely close to the United States, one of the world's most important and influential countries. No one wants to mess with them or their allies. Israel has a culture based solely around its survival because it is surrounded by immediate danger from all sides except the Mediterranean. Israel has buffer areas surrounding the countries, such as the Glasgow Heights to the north or the Negev Desert to the south. But if these buffer areas are taken by the enemy, they could be turned into blessings turned into disguise, as these being captured would leave Israel's lowlands next to the Mediterranean Ocean in a very easily attackable position. The differences between Israel and the other countries in the list is that Israel is the smallest economy in the list because it is too busy surviving to focus on really exporting or manufacturing. Israel is the only country with direct access to the Mediterranean Ocean. It is most likely to keep ties with Washington as the years go by, but it could be debated that Japan could also do it, as Japan and the United States have a lot of trade agreements that greatly benefit both. It is less dependent on foreign military aid and has defended itself many times through the years, such as in the 6 Year War. What I mean with this is that its allies, like countries of the NATO powers and the United States, of course, supply it with technological superior weapons, but the Israelis also produce their own, and they have a very strong armed forces that could defend itself and have defended itself many times. Only country in the list that has an extremely dangerous situation regarding its neighbors and a very complicated statehood survival. Its statehood could be eradicated in any moment, and it always has to think about it how to survive. We're gonna skip the similarities because we've already mentioned them, and we're gonna go through them again at the end of the list. So in UAE. And the anatomy of power of Israel is that it is a small but comparably strong to its size, militarily strong country with extremely powerful allies. Now we're going to talk about Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is one of the world's most important agents regarding oil exporting. It has a lot of oil in and around the country. It is the most important country for the Muslim religion thanks to the sacred city of Mecca, which thousands and thousands and thousands of Muslims take the road trip there to Mecca to worship the religion. I'm not really sure how it works. It has direct access to many of the world's most important merchant waterways: the Gulf of Oman to the west, the Red Sea to the northwest, which in part takes you to the Suez Canal by Egypt and then the Mediterranean Ocean. So it basically connects the east and the west. And finally, it has access to the Persian Gulf, although Iran could take this privilege away at any moment if their diplomacy goes south. It has a very diverse population and has varying levels of affinity to statehood of Saudi Arabia. Some are conservatives and very loyal to the crown of Saudi Arabia. Some are more monopolitan in the west of the country. And it has many different Muslim aligned religious groups and minorities. It depends greatly on foreign policy to police their waterways and ensure their ability to trade with other countries. And it has a very one way economy. 87% of Saudi export revenue is based around oil. It is the country most, we're going to talk about the differences now, sorry. It is the country most likely to lose American protection as time passes and oil is no longer needed from the Saudis by the United States. They have found ways of getting their own. Monarch is in total control of the country. The UAE is different, even though it is technically a monarchy, as there are 7 monarchs and they hold elections to decide which of the monarchs is going to be president. Only country that could quickly change their economic ability within 20 years and diversify in money-making strategies thanks to their geographical position being next to very important merchant waterways. If they choose to invest in port building along the world's most busiest waterways, they could greatly grow their economies. Saudi Arabia is 100% dependent on foreign power for their protection. They have a lot of weapons, but they depend on the United States to use them in case of a foreign invasion. And again, we're going to skip the similarities at the end. And the most important aspect of Saudi Arabia is the world's most important carbohydrate-based product exporter with the capability to grow massively if its monarchy invests in the right project. And now we're going to talk about this country, um, what is best at, and according to explain it according to its anatomy of power. So Saudi Arabia is obviously the world's most important oil exporter, and it being located next to an ocean waterway gives it a great advantage. Now we're going to talk about the UAE. The UAE is a very important oil exporter. It has same as Saudi Arabia, lots of oil in and around the country. Like Saudi Arabia, but to a less extent, it greatly depends on oil exports. 42, so almost half of UAE's revenue comes from exporting oil. Neighboring incredibly important waterways that connect east and west, just like Saudi Arabia. They're neighbors, so they share a lot of similarities regarding their geographical features. Only 12% of its populations are citizens of the United Arab Emirates. The differences of the UAE with the other countries in the list is that it does not depend on Iran for access to the Persian Gulf, such as the Saudis. Out of the four, UAE has the least significant relationship with the United States of America, even though they do have some kind of relationship. It is the smallest country in the list, not by far, and it is the youngest country of the four, not by far either. We're going to talk about the similarities again, just to refresh your mind. All four countries have access to the open sea. All four countries rely heavily on foreign help for their survival as powerful states. All four countries could be easily manipulated by rivals by closing down trade routes. All four countries have difficult situations regarding their populations, so we're going to go through them just one more time. Israel has problems with Palestine within its borders. Japan's population is exponentially growing older, and UAE has 88% of its people are foreigners, and Saudi Arabia with conflicting Muslim ideologies. And UAE's anatomy of power, it is a small but incredibly rich country that relies heavily on exporting oil to the rest of the world. And the best that they're at is, just like Saudi Arabia, exporting oil and being near waterways, to use these waterways to export oil to the rest of the world. So thank you a lot for watching, and I'll see you next week.